Hi, my name is Ron Bloomfield, Collections Manager here at the Museum of Cultural and Natural History on the campus of CMU. We're in Rowe Hall, which is where the museum is located. But today, we're going to take a tour of the museum. This is a training ground for museum study students. So a lot of the things you're going to see, they actually have either had a hand in making or they've had a hand in curating. So with that, I'm going to take you on a tour of the gallery, and we're also going to then go see some of our behind-the-scenes collections. So why don't you follow me into the gallery. And you're standing in what is now the main gallery of the Museum of Cultural and Natural History. This actually used to be, this was a training school. Rowe Hall itself was a training school at one time, and we were standing in what was the gymnasium. We have high ceilings, and we have a decent amount of floor space that with which we can set these exhibits, which are, for the most part, have been student-done exhibits over the years. In this case, the student was showcasing part of our large geology collection, parts of a little bit about how fossils are created, and showing some of the fossil evidence of the mastodon, which was found 16 miles southwest of Mount Pleasant. This is our mastodon diorama that we have that features material that augments the case I just talked about. This is a sort of a habitat recreation of what it would have looked like at the time that the mastodons were in Michigan, including the pieces of the mastodon that were found very close to Mount Pleasant. And it gives you sort of an idea of what that habitat would look like. And it also gave our students a chance to work with large-scale dioramas, of which what this is. A lot of this is obviously production material, but it is one of our bigger exhibits, and it's utilized quite a bit in educational programs. The last couple of years, we've featured a program called Curious Curators, where it's an application, and we select a certain amount of students from the local school districts that can come in and be a curator for a day, and they get to work with our staff. And part of the product that we come up with after they've learned all about museums, what a museum is, and how to handle artifacts, they get to help put an exhibit together. And this was this year's exhibit that we had with 5 individual students this last year. Since we are interdisciplinary, history is a large part of our collection as well. We do have some historical exhibits spread throughout the gallery, and in this case we're talking a little bit about lumbering. Lumbering was it was almost like the gold rush in California. It was the lumber rush in Michigan. And being in the central Michigan area with abundant rivers, we had a lot of potential for lumbering to happen in this area. And therefore a fair amount of our collection revolves around lumbering implements, lumbering information about lumbering, etc., lumbering artifacts. This is an example of one of our temporary exhibits that we have. And in this case, it's an introduction to the Great Lakes, and it talks a little bit about threats to the Great Lakes. It was done in conjunction with the Institute for Great Lakes Research. It talks a lot about things like invasive species and some of the research going on to help with the water quality and just a whole host of other things related to the Great Lakes. When I was a student at CMU back in the 1990s, this was part of the project that I worked on. One of the projects was this trapper's cabin, fur trader's cabin, that was done to be an authentic recreation that we could then also use as an educational opportunity for students. And today we still utilize this exhibit for those purposes. Here with Dakota, one of our student assistants, and we're going to get a behind-the-scenes tour at the museum. We're standing in the Natural History Collection room in Rowe Hall, where the museum is located. This room houses part of our mount collection, which is natural history specimens that have been made to look like the real and lifelike, as if they would have been in the wild.
These mounts are an important way for people to get up close to these animals, because normally these are going to just fly away from you, like as soon as you get remotely close to them. So when we have them out in exhibits, this is the best way for people to actually get a feel for what these animals look like and how they live. These are some of the birds that we have in our collection. So here's a common merganser. Right here is an osprey. This bird likes to eat fish. It's predatory. And then this common merganser is sexually dimorphic, so that means that the male looks like this, but the female looks a lot different from this type.
Now we're in the room that houses our historical collections, and our historical collections are derived from things collected from the area, from the local area, from CMU history, and then other things related to stuff that would have been typically found in this region, in Michigan, during periods of history, and we preserve them for posterity's sake. We have a fairly large collection of what we call costumes, which are actually historical clothing. Some of them we store on racks like this, where they're able to be hung from padded hangers in order to preserve them, make them viable for the future. And others we store in boxes. It's able to be stored on these racks and in climate control. It's something that will help preserve the object for a very long time. And we also collect parts of buildings from around campus and things that are found when they're actually excavating or working on buildings. In this case, we have a door from one of the bathroom stalls of the alumni field house, complete with a toilet paper holder. And this type of an artifact actually has a lot of meaning, because people would have noticed, people would have been, this is something that people would have seen on a regular basis if they were in that particular building. So they would have an emotional connection to it, or some kind of connection to it anyway. We have objects in the collection that in this case would have been either an educational prop, or more than likely it was more of a parlor device used as for entertainment. It's called a stereopticon viewer. These are called stereo slides, and they essentially have two images printed on them, and one is they're slightly different perspectives. They would go inside of the clips, and then you would move the clip back and forth, and you'd look through. And as you move this back and forth, you get a 3D image of this. This was something that was very popular. They would have tours of the world where you would have various landmarks, and you could see them in 3D. It's almost like 3D glasses at the movie theater, that sort of thing. In addition to the stereopticon viewers, we also have an early form of projector, which now we have data projectors and televisions and things like that that can project images, but the early way to do it was called a magic lantern. We have parts of a magic lantern here. There would have been a flame, would have actually provided the light, and then through this series of lenses that were in this lantern, like I say, this is only a piece of one, they would use a specific type of slide that has 4 distinct circular vignettes in it, and these were essentially put into this viewfinder and rolled through one by one, and they could then project, basically would take the projector, would project this up onto the screen, and they could do this in a large theater and could actually get a fairly large image to come up on the screen down on the stage. And you could actually move these through fairly quickly through the viewfinder, and it would sometimes create moving, almost like a moving picture, but they were static pictures, one slightly different than the other. In this case, we've got some early airplanes, almost like Wright brothers, and this was probably telling that story of early aviation, and this would have been brought out by somebody. Typically they would have come to the local opera house, and they would have, whether it was in this case the Wright brothers, or maybe it was a story of one of the wars, or it was in some cases they would do a tour of the world, and they would use the magic, the Professor such and such and his magic lantern would be the feature, and they would show this, and then the people would come in, and just like they do with movies now, that was a form of entertainment back then. We are an interdisciplinary program, so we offer experiences in history and biology and anthropology and geology, and we also we have a large museum education and museum studies component as well. And that's where currently the students in our program They learn their major disciplines, but they also are, in a lot of cases, are cross-trained to work with exhibits, to work with education programs, to work with collections, and pretty much everything that